Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Portia Sabin. I am the president of the Music Business Association, and I am super excited for this webinar today. Um, we are really lucky to be able to have this conversation. It's such an interesting study that was done, and we get to participate in more ways than you would imagine. We're actually going to get to have everyone in this webinar participate in the same type of thing that the study studied, which is, can you tell the difference between fully AI generated music and music made by humans? So before we get into that, I would love to welcome my guest. She is the CMO of Deezer, Maria Garrido.
Much. Hello, Portia. Thank you very much for welcoming me.
Hey, I'm so happy to have you here. I'm very excited to share this with our listeners today. I know we have multiple people who are very excited to talk about the study that you guys commissioned with Ipsos about listener perceptions of AI generated music. So, what we had decided would be fun for those of you who are on the webinar, you guys can all chat in the chat. What we thought we would do is we would actually play three clips for you and have you guys guess which one was the AI generated clip. So, Maria, do you want to lead us into
Yeah,
that?
let's take it away. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that everybody can see the slideshow of the presentation. Hopefully, you can just give me a thumbs up, Portia, so I know that you can see it. Great. Okay, so before we get started, just a bit of context. In the streaming platform universe, AI music is flooding our platforms. In January, we were at about 10% of the music that was being loaded onto the platforms every day had AI generated content in it. And only 12 months later, it's 50,000 tracks a day of AI generated music on platforms, which is about 34% of what gets downloaded, uploaded up to our platform. So at Deezer, we were grappling very early on this year as we started to detect this pattern. What do we do about it? And before I get into what Deezer's doing about it, we wanted to understand if our views on what to do about AI music in streaming platforms actually reflected the views of customers around the world. So what we're going to share with you today is the results of this study that we ran in 8 different countries with 9,000 people, general population representative, to try and understand the attitudes that people have towards AI in general, but more specifically towards AI in music, where they think it can be beneficial, where they don't necessarily trust it and are a bit concerned. But to do that, we're going to put you through the exact same audio test that we put the people in the survey through, which means I'm going to play 3 tracks for you, and you can all put into the chat which one you think is the human created piece of music versus the 2 AI generated pieces of music. So here we go. Everybody get your ears propped up and see if you can tell the difference.
Maria, I think the audio cut out.
Do you think
Can
the
you?
audio cut off?
Yeah, I heard something I heard the first song and then I didn't hear anything after that.
Okay, let's do this. Let's just go with the second track and try again. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, Portia, okay?
With more guitars, dreaming big beneath the stars. 23. In the breeze, children's names
Okay, did you hear all 3?
I heard all three. Do you want to do number one again so that people
Let's do
can?
number 1 again. Okay, just in case, so everybody can take stock of what they think is the human one versus the AI ones.
Oh, pretty woman, you want a diamond ring.
Okay, that was number 1. Okay, so I can't see what's in the chat, Portia, but do you want
Oh
do you
my
want to
gosh.
comment a bit
The
before I move
second one
on
is
and
the
tell the
real
truth?
one. The second one is the real one. Number two is AI. Three is human. Two and three are AI. One is real. No idea.
Okay, it's all over the place. It's all over the place, which, by the way, also reflects what we discovered in the study. The truth is, track number one is the only human-made song on this. And if you got this wrong, believe it or not, you're not alone. 97% of the people that took this test with us around the world could not figure out the difference between the AI-generated music and the human-made music. And if you're wondering if some countries were more audio intelligent than others, the only difference was the UK, where 5% of the people got it right versus 3% everywhere else. So net, most of us cannot tell the difference between a piece of audio generated music and human created music. In fact, today, 100% of the AI generated music that we see is clearly undistinguishable by the human ear, which makes us all a little bit nervous. So just to recap what I said at the beginning of the study, we ran this in 8 different countries with 9,000 people all over the world. And what we were trying to gauge is what people's attitudes were towards AI in music, how they think this affects their listening experience, their personalized recommendations, but also what they think this does to the music industry and to artists as a whole. So some of the key findings that we have from this study, and I'm not going to focus on a specific country. I'll point out when we think there's interesting things, but for the most part, we're going to do the global results. So the first thing that we know is that AI has crossed the mainstream. Everybody is fully aware of AI outside of music, just generally speaking. 98% of the people we talk to have heard of AI, and they're fully aware that they can use it today thanks to all of the tools that are out there. In fact, almost 3/4 of the people we spoke to have at least used AI in some form or other in recent months. We also know that AI sentiment towards music is very multifaceted, and I would say, as you'll see as we go through the study, evolving. I suspect that if we run this study 6 months from now, we might get completely different answers. But today what we know is that most people are really curious about music and about AI in music, but they have a sentiment of like not necessarily trusting what they're seeing coming from AI. And this proliferates across all entertainment industries. If we look at music, they really look at it, and I think this is a good summary of what we saw in this study. Most people think that AI is a great tool in music because it could help creation in the future of music. We don't know exactly what that means, but primarily because it can help me discover more music that I like. And it's more AI at the service of personalization and a customized and better experience as a listener on a music streaming platform than it is about creative expression being replaced by AI. So 51% of the people that we talked to said that they were pretty convinced that any AI generated music would be more low quality and sound kind of generic. If you think about how AI models work, and I'm going to use a word that's not sexy, which is just predictive analytics, which what AI is predictive analytics. It takes historical data, it spots patterns, and it tries to spit out a refreshed version of that data. So most people understand that if AI generated music is using, we'll talk about copyright in a second, but if it's using existing music, it's just going to generate the most generic patterns it can spit out, and you'll have rather generic sounding music and no fresh sounds coming out of AI generated music. They also feel that it could lead, even if we see AI tools proliferating in music creation and music production, they are worried that it could lead to a significant loss of creativity in the music industry. So you can forget about those albums like Rosalia's Lux that stand out of the pot today and can't be defined. They fear that this kind of innovation and out-of-the-box music creation will disappear if we continue to see a proliferation of AI tools in the music industry. So when we look at what people say as they believe that music can help them listen to music, get better experiences, more personalized recommendations, and they're super curious about it, they say they would listen to AI generated music. But again, as we said, they believe it could lead to a loss of creativity in the field as a whole. So all of you, I don't know if this was the first time that you actually knew you were listening to AI music, because maybe you already have and you haven't realized it, but there is general curiosity to see what it does inside of the music industry. And that can be for either how we can modify music with AI or how artists and musicians and AI tools can create music on their own. And we do feel there is this confidence and reality gap. And to be honest, my personal opinion is I don't think this applies just to music. I think especially any form of entertainment, there is this general paradox where people are like, okay, I think I can tell the difference. And then I hear it and I'm surprised that I can't really tell the difference. And now this makes me very uncomfortable, which can be the case with, fake videos as well. They're not sure they can trust the AI music or the AI generated content that is coming at them, especially when you put people to the blind test and they realize that they can't actually tell the difference. As I'm sure most of you on this call could not. And if you could, congratulations, but I'm guessing it was just a random good guess. Okay, so there is something that for us was a reassurance. Oops. I don't know if any of you know, but since January, Deezer has been using tools to detect AI music, mostly 95% of it is coming from the two biggest platforms, Suno and Udio. And we are actively tagging AI generated content in our platform. So we're not including it in recommendations. It's pushed out of the algorithm, and we do not let our editors include it in playlists either. And it's been very reassuring to us from an ethical standpoint to see that even customers believe that there should be transparency and control when it comes to using AI in music. So 80% of the people agree that music that's 100% generated should be clearly labeled to listeners. For your information, Deezer today is the only platform actively doing this and providing transparency. We're not against AI, but we're making sure that we inform our listeners that when they're listening to a piece of content that has AI generated music in it, we tag it and label it properly. 73% of the music streaming users would like to know, thank God for us at Deezer, if a music streaming service is recommending AI generated music. Now, what was interesting about this study is we found general population in the 9,000 people that we surveyed. So they weren't necessarily people that were as knowledgeable in the music industry or as super fans or super music listeners. And yet everyone understood one important thing, which is that the proliferation of AI generated music will definitely threaten the livelihood of current and future musicians, artists, composers, and creators. Everyone gets that very loud and clear. People understood that they need to protect, that artist rights need to be protected. So they believe it is unethical for AI companies to use copyrighted material when it is not being properly remunerated to generate new music without the approval of the artist. I read recently that in the United States, it's been very clear by a recent government administration, there's been announcements about not protecting copyright around AI. This is a topic that people really have top of mind, and they're concerned that artists will not be remunerated or approved or informed that their music is being used to generate AI music. 69% of the people we surveyed believe that payouts for AI generated music should be lower, i.e., let's not dilute the pool of remuneration for artists. And if you're gonna put AI music in your playlist, in your algorithmic recommendations, it should not be remunerated the same as real human creativity, which is very reassuring for me as a human being, but also for Deezer. And then 65% told us that it actually shouldn't be allowed. No copyrighted materials should be allowed to be used to train AI models that are creating music. It should be creating stuff from scratch and not using material that is copyrighted and protected for artists. So this was actually quite reassuring, as I said. We found that generally speaking, people had a very clear ethical stance on how AI models should be used, they should not be used, and how we need to make sure that we are protecting artist remuneration, artist creativity, and audience intellectual property when it comes to the use of music in AI models and AI generated content. So we feel that there is a clear mandate from consumers that it should be kept from human artistry. In fact, only 11% of the people that we surveyed believe that AI music should be treated equally on charts, i.e. when you see the top Billboard music of the week, 89% of people think it should not include music generated by AI, that it should really be a space that is reserved for true human artistry. In fact, 52% of the people feel that it shouldn't even include it at all. It shouldn't be compared to or included when it comes to main charts and top streamed music, and it shouldn't be compared to human-made songs in general. So If I summarize some of the things that we've been looking at today, especially for Deezer, it's a big reassurance to us that people clearly are curious about AI. They understand that AI can be at the service of personalization in a streaming platform, of a more customized and better experience within a platform. It can also be at the service of music production and music creation. But, this is a very big but, all in capital letters, it should not replace the expression of human creativity in music. And I suspect that also applies to other areas of human creativity in entertainment. What we see is most people, despite the fact that the UK maybe had a better ear, 97% of the people in the blind test could not tell the difference between an AI generated piece of music and a human created piece of music, which despite their curiosity meant that there was definitely a knowledge gap, which creates a level of distrust and concern about what AI is going to do to the music industry, fearing that this will make human creativity decline and that we need to make sure in turn that we are transparent, that we're controlling how much that AI generated music gets filtered into playlist recommendations, algorithmic recommendations and streaming platforms, and that we make sure that we protect the copyright and of artists, of creators, of music producers, and anyone involved in this industry to make sure that the human aspect of creative expression continues to be the highlight of this industry, and that the industry does not become blanketed with generic AI generated music moving forward. So that is the net. We have a lot more data. If anybody is interested in the data and the differences between countries, we would be happy to share that separately. You're welcome to send me an email at mgarrido@deezer.com. But we're going to open it up for Portia and her questions and any of your questions in the chat as well. And thank you so much for this time to present these results to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. That is such an interesting study. I'm so grateful that you guys did it. I think it's interesting that Deezer chose to do both at the same time. It's not like you did a study and then waited to see what the
Exactly.
results
Thank
were
God.
before.
This study, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, figuring out how to, you guys are sort of leading the pack in terms of AI detection tools. One of the things, there's just so many aspects of this that are problematic, but like so many things in the music industry, technology advances and then we have to chase it because changes just happen. And then we as an industry are like, uh-oh, this has happened. Like, so largely the AI cat is kind of out of the bag, which is why I think
Yep.
this is an interesting study because it's quite interesting to know what people's attitudes and thoughts about AI are now that it's sort of in the system.
Exactly. And I think, initially we are even surprised the level of acceleration that has happened since January. We're using AI tools to detect AI generated content in the music platform, but I'm just appalled that today 50,000 tracks loaded on every day to our platform have AI in it. And the good news is that only 0.5% of our streams today are with AI music because we're tagging things properly. But the purpose for us is clear, it's fraud. 70% of the streams of that 0.5 are fraudulent. So it's AI bots listening to AI music to basically flood the streaming platforms and drive remuneration away from the artist into this artificial content. I'm a little bit afraid to see where the numbers are going to go next month. We've been reporting on the percentage of uploaded tracks every month that are AI generated, and we're at 34% today. I don't know what January, February is going to bring, but if this keeps going, it's very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to think about, if people don't want this music, they don't feel like it's going to have a positive net, effect on the ecosystem. You guys are already seeing that in that it's really not being streamed, right? People are just
Yeah,
not
exactly. But again, that
listening to
might
it.
be because in our case, we're tagging the music, Portia. I don't know
Mm.
if this is a chicken or an egg situation, right? We now know based on the study that people aren't comfortable with it, especially after they try to listen and realize they can't tell the difference, right? So what they're looking for is transparency. We have been tagging it since we started detecting it, and today 0.5% of our streams are AI. I don't know what the level of streams of AI are on other platforms. Earlier in the year, there was a big band that came out called the Velvet Sound. That I don't know if I'm sure you heard about it, Portia,
Oh
which
yeah.
was a fully AI generated band, and it was gathering millions and millions of streams on other platforms. It's on our platform, but it's tagged. So I'd be curious at other platforms, what percentage of the music that aren't tagging and being transparent about AI music, what percentage of that is actually from AI generated content?
So now if Deezer tags something as 100% AI generated, does it take it out of the income stream so it's not producing revenue?
Right, exactly. Yes, today,
Okay.
yes, that is the case. Today, it's basically, it doesn't go into the playlist pool and it doesn't go into our algorithmic recommendations, which means it's already diluted all the way down to the minimum streams.
Okay. Because I think that's a concern that seems to be popular in the chat on this webinar is people are wondering, are folks actually successfully making money with these AI generated tracks? Because that's
Well, think
another
about, I mean,
aspect.
yeah, 70% of those 0.5 is fraud. So what we're basically doing is detecting fraud. I mean, that right there, that 70% is definitely not being remunerated because it's just, as I said, AI bots streaming AI music to just basically flood the platforms and take the eye away from human artistry,
Right. And
the eye and the
obviously,
ear.
if that becomes an industry-wide practice, then I mean, we talk about fraud a lot at Music Biz, and the one thing about the fraudsters is they're very clever and they will
Mhm.
change the way they do things. So that's one
Right.
other piece of this is that it's possible if there's just no money coming in by creating fully AI tracks, maybe they'll go do something different. I mean, it'll also be something heinous that we have to figure out how to fight, but
I'm
it
suspecting,
won't do that.
my suspicion, Portia, is that today 95% of the music that's being loaded onto our platform is through the tools, through the use of Suno or Udio. I suspect, to your point, as other tools begin to develop and proliferate, it's our own AI detection programs are going to have to evolve to make sure that we can track from other platforms and other new tools music that is being AI generated.
Right. And that's just to be clear, Suno and Udio are these AI generation platforms. And so of course, interestingly, they trained on the entirety of, recorded music that was out there, which is also something that we're having an issue with at this moment, whether that was legal or how that folks should be compensated for that in the future. But your detection tools had to be trained on Suno and Udio, so they can
Correct.
detect if it was created by Suno or Udio. However, other platforms that arise, we're then going to have to chase that. We're going to have to create a detection technology to detect that.
Exactly,
Um,
you're right. It's moving. It's such a fast pace. I mean, training on the two most dominant tools that exist in the market today is really about us tracking patterns of synthetic artifacts in the audio that we can predict based on the music, and then we actually verify it within the actual musical. Like, there's three layers that we go into. It's a bit technical, and I'm not the techie in the business. I'm just the CMO, but I do know that right now it's, let's say, despite the volume that's coming in, we have it down packed because 95% of it is coming from two different types of tools. But you're absolutely right. Our tools are now pending patents. We've filed 2 patents for the tools that we have on AI detection and fraud, but we're going to have to move as fast as the pirates do to make sure that when new tools come into play that we can detect that music as well.
Absolutely. So I think one thing that everyone in the chat is always is concerned about, and I think we're all concerned about, is what is this going to do to real creators of real music, non-AI generated music? And just to be split hairs and be a little persnickety, I think there are a lot of AI tools out there that a lot of legitimate artists do use. So there are aspects of music creation that involve AI that's totally legitimate in the eyes of, thinking about things as creation, legitimate creation. But of course, we're talking very specifically about 100% AI generated.
Correct, correct. And I think, even in the study, I mean, people are quite reasonable. What we looked at in one of the slides was that people are very conscious of the fact that AI can serve two purposes in the music industry. The first is to make their experience as a listener better, more personalized, smoother, better UX, etc. But also in the use and creation of music by real artists. So 100% with you, Portia. We see the same. We believe the same thing. It should be used as a tool to enable human creative expression and not to replace it.
Absolutely. Because I mean, I feel like the last 25 years of the music industry has just been a long conversation about how creators are getting less and less and less and less and less and less money, at the
And
end of the day.
one of the people in the chat put, and I agree with this, like the battle for monetizing AI is just getting started. We've seen a lot of thing in the press lately with all of the majors having discussions with these AI platforms on how to make sure that their copyrights are being protected and properly remunerated. And it's moving really fast. So who knows where we'll be 2 to 3 months from now.
Yeah, I know. It's really quite a crazy slope that we're on. So I wanted to get to some of the questions that are in the chat because a lot of people have been uh, asking some good stuff. So one of the questions that someone asked is where, like, how were folks selected for this study? And did they have any prior knowledge of about music, or was it really kind of a random group?
No, we purposefully went and got general population 18 to 55 because we just wanted, a general citizen's point of view without going in and digging into the experts in each of the markets or people who would be specifically knowledgeable about the music industry dynamics.
Amazing. And then in terms of the answers to the questions, were there any significant gender differences?
Oh, that is a good question. Hold on. I think I can actually answer that. I don't think the only thing that I remember, let me look at the data here. The only thing that I remember that was quite interesting was that Brazil, of all of the countries, was the most open to the proliferation of AI generated music versus other countries. So let me see if I can see some data around male versus female. I have the full study in front of me. It's really long. So if I don't find it in the 100 odd pages right now, I can certainly send you that information afterwards.
Yeah, you can take a look at that. We've got a good question here that I
Yeah.
wanted to get to from Tatiana Cirasano. She says, so Deezer tags 100% AI generated tracks, but the boundary between human and AI music is only going to get blurrier. How do you see Deezer's detection and enforcement systems evolving in response? What about the songs that are 90%, 80%, etc.?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think right now those are where our discussions we are having internally. It's one thing when it's just coming from a tool versus, as you said, from an artist. If we have an artist that is using AI tools, we have to be able to detect that and to what level, right? If 90% of the album is generated by AI and then you've just got the voice from the artist, what is the ethical debate around that and what is our position? I think for us, the guiding principles are going to be around making sure that we're fighting for the artists who create music and the fans who like to live it. So ensuring that the music is being properly monetized with proper creators is important for us. And to be honest, I don't know yet where we're going to land on the 60% versus 70% versus 72%. I don't know where the line is. And as those tools start to proliferate with artists, it's going to be discussions that we're going to have to be having with the rights holders to draw the line on where is it more human than AI.
Yeah. So, obviously you work for Deezer, you can only speak for Deezer, but are you getting a sense personally that there is a conversation going on? I mean, Deezer is currently the only DSP that's doing 100%, AI detection. But do you feel like others are going to follow suit? Like, do you feel like that's something that's coming down the pike?
We haven't seen it yet, but I do feel the discussion being driven by the DSPs as well as the labels, and primarily by the labels, which they have every good reason to, is to start talking about copyright monetization, right? How do we make sure that we're remunerating artists when their material is being used by a platform to generate AI music? I think that is the big debate I've seen in the last few months, much more than our competitors tagging AI music in their platform.
Yeah, and that, I feel like there's a lot that we can't know today that we will know in a few months because there are a ton of lawsuits, for example, in the US, in front of and a lot of like 17 bills in front of Congress that have exactly to do with AI generated music on both sides, the generation of the music and also the creation of the new songs, right? Like where it came from and how it spits out, both ends. And do you have a sense now that Universal and Warner have signed deals with Suno and Udio?
Sorry, my son was calling me. This is the, the challenge
Of
of
course.
Zoom. Go ahead. I turned it off. Tell me, what's your question, Marsha?
Um, I was just saying now that a couple of the majors have signed deals with Suno and Udio, we are assuming that that is going to create revenue streams for artists whose works were utilized to train those models. So there is a path to sort of legitimization in the future. But right now we are still having this conversation, right? And so I think one
Yeah.
of the problems with, the conversation that we're having is just, in 6 months, it could be a totally different story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to be honest, when we ran this study, even us, we were saying this is work in progress. Whatever, we're going to take the pulse of what the average music listener believes today. But I suspect 6 months, 12 months from now, as this evolves, and especially at the speed it's evolving, you might have a very different attitude. Maybe everyone, I hope not, but maybe everyone is going to be like Brazil by the end of this, where Brazilians are extremely open and enthusiastic and much more trusting of AI in music than we've seen in other countries in this study.
That's interesting. And I think trust, I don't know. I have a 15-year-old, so I always think about, how much do kids really care about, if something's cool and their friends think it's cool, do they actually care if an artist is getting compensated? Like I think eventually people do, but there's like a moment where I think, kids in particular don't necessarily have the same, moral compass about music.
I saw, and I wish I could remember the name of the study because I knew it was going to come up today. I saw a study recently, it might have been from Illuminate, but don't quote me, I will find it and let you know. That basically showed that Gen Z's attitudes towards AI in forms of creative expression and entertainment were more aligned with Gen X, with their parents, which is me basically, of the Gen Zs, or you, Portia, than millennials. It seemed like millennials were a bit more open. And I've seen in other industries some backlash on the use of AI and industries that generally target Gen Z. It's not the millennial generation. So I'm curious to see what happens in this space with AI music and younger cohorts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to another question in the chat. Oh, someone brought up in the chat here that DDEX has been having these conversations. And so anyone who works for a company that's a member of DDEX, that these are ongoing conversations. So it, sort of to the question of are DSPs talking about this, are people in the industry, working on this? I think DDEX is a great organization that has in fact been working on these questions amongst many others as well. And also the newly formed Music Fights Fraud Alliance in the US is another organization that's quite concerned about stuff like this. So, if you're listening and you want to check out either of those organizations, they're going to have some answers for you, perhaps better than we do at this exact second. Um, so what? Oh, this is interesting. Are you using active blocking software against sudo udio outputs? Is that even possible?
I don't have a technical answer to that. No, I don't think we're blocking it. We're not, again, we're not passing judgment on AI generated music. Okay. We're not against it. We're just for transparency. So when we detect music on our platform that is coming from Suno or from Udio, we tag it and we make sure that when you're listening to it, it says this is 100%, AI generated content. So we're not blocking it. We are blocking it from the algorithm so that it's not being recommended to listeners, and we are ensuring that our editors don't include it in their playlist. But it is available on the platform.
Uh, and someone else said this is a really good one. If you guys thinking of continuing the study, like doing it multiple years down the line? Because this person's suggestion is, if someone initially uh, responded that they experienced discomfort with the thought of AI, it would be really interesting to see if they're listening, how their listening develops. Do they actually start listening to more AI generated stuff?
Not just how they're listening, how their attitude develops as AI tools become more prolific in every aspect of our lives. It's a discussion we're having internally because we understand that what we run right now is just the pulse at this very moment. And 6 months from now, as I said, or 12 months from now, it might be a completely different attitude towards these kinds of tools.
Yeah. So are you guys are planning on doing this study in the future?
I would like to, yes. Let's see how the topic evolves. Yes.
Yeah. And that's true because like we just said, it's going to evolve in ways that we probably can't imagine. Just like, I love having conversations about stuff in the music industry because half the time it goes in a completely different direction than we all think it will.
Well, on the good days, I say it's great because there's something new every day.
I know, I know. So, where are people going to be able to get a hold of the results of the study? Like, are you releasing this information somewhere?
So we have a press release that's available on our newsroom that has all of the key data from the study in it. This we can certainly share the presentation we shared with you today, and if anybody wants any more detailed information, country specific, they can contact us directly.
Excellent. That is great. And we did put our contact information in the chat, so you guys have that and can get in touch with either one of us. All right. So, I think it is interesting. There are some folks in the chat are saying, like, why do you even allow AI generated stuff on your system? Like, why do you even allow that to happen? And I think that's just an interesting question in general. This has to do with, a lot has to do with. I always say the music industry is a patchwork of historical accidents. And one of the things about DSPs is in the early days, everyone was allowed. That was the
Mm,
model. It was the whole
yeah.
point was we don't have gatekeepers anymore. The internet is for everyone. So everyone should be allowed to upload their music to services. So, coming from that to where we are now is quite a long trip for DSPs and for everybody else.
And I don't think it's specific to the music industry. We can be asking the same question on film production and content on social media platforms. Why is it even allowed? Aren't creators on social media platforms going to lose their remuneration and their revenue sources if everything is proliferated babies talking like adults? That is all AI generated content. That's the stuff that's crushing my feed right now. But it's the same question in the entire entertainment and human creation space. And I think that is perhaps the one space where everybody gets a little bit uneasy because we believe in our heart of hearts that human creativity is something that makes us unique as a species. So if AI can replace data analysis, predictive analytics and statistics, modeling of traffic, all of that's great. But when it replaces artists and musicians and painters and composers and film directors and actors, there's a lot of questions about what happens to us as a species and what makes us unique anymore.
Right. But I also think it's that question that you guys have in the survey about diluting creativity and also moving towards a more generic middle. I mean, if
Exactly.
if 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 AI generated music is constantly striving to replace to recreate the most popular stuff, we're going to end up with stuff that's just not as interesting and not as
Exactly.
special. And I think humans are great in one way because we're always, I think people get sick of that and they'll be like, let's go find something else that's not that. And I
Yeah.
think that's inevitable, but I also think we have to think about remuneration before we get there so that people don't lose their entire livelihoods as we're making that transition to a place where people are more interested in the generic, more interested in the less generic, I should say.
Yeah, I have an existential crisis personally about this whole topic, Portia. So I don't want to go down this road because I'm worried about emotion. Like what happens to emotion when everything becomes generic, you know?
Right. I mean, I guess, and obviously we do not know the answers, but all I can say is that if you look at history, artists and creators and musicians have persevered. So in the face of so much technological change, we still have wonderful artists to this day. And I mean, one thing about my 15-year-old is he introduces me to music that I've never heard before, and some of it is incredible, like really different. I mean, talk about, Rosalia or whoever new sounds, right? People doing new stuff
Right.
and people getting really excited about it. And I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the greatest thing about music, right?
That's the
Is when
magic, right?
that's
Yeah.
the magic. People are
Yeah.
are truly creative and
And
there's
and
room.
I think the tools, just like the, Just like Google Docs was supposed to replace people and Microsoft Excel was going to replace accountants and all of this stuff, like we're having the same debate in a different industry. And what reassured me looking at the results of this survey was that people understood that AI tools could definitely be used in music, but for the right things.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, people do understand that. And I think especially if they have a 5 minute conversation with artists who use the AI tools about how it's helping and how, one thing, this came up recently in a conversation I had with a friend who is an artist. One of the hardest things for artists for years has been demo creation because if you don't have a full band and it's just you and you don't have a lot of money and you really can't get into a studio and make a fully fleshed out demo, AI tools allow you to do that in a really impressive and special way. So, there's definitely positives to AI. I mean, we can't just sort of throw the whole thing out and say it's not good for our industry, therefore we're out.
Yeah, in essence, it's there. It should be there to enable creative expression, not to replace it.
Right. But at the same time, I saw a great presentation by the RIAA on the legislation that's, in front of Congress and the lawsuits. And one of the things is, should someone who sits down and writes a song and sings a song and plays the instruments on a song be compensated exactly the same as someone who types in a prompt?
Interesting
Because
question.
is that the same act of creation? And I
That's a
think a
good
lot of
question.
us would say no, right? It's not exactly the same. It takes no talent to, and that's this is why we get into trouble because this is the really crux of the question, right? What does it take to type in a prompt? Anyone can type in a prompt. I want a country song that sounds like such and has the word rain in it.
So we
But
had to just a bit of a parallel because we have an internal creative studio at Deezer that works on all of our design assets for the brand. And we started using the static and motion designers started using AI tools. And what's been really interesting is that, it's not replacing them, it's allowing them to get the busy work done in a more effective and efficient way so we can focus their creative energy in the strategic spaces that most matter for our brand. So I would love to be able to just parallel that into this industry, right? The heavy lifting, the things, the example you just gave, where an artist needs to create a demo and they can't afford to hire a studio and a full band, but the vision is theirs. It's not the tools, and they use the tools to accelerate the process, be efficient and effective about it, and then put their energy and their creativity where it actually most matters to their artistry. Then I think we've hit a good marriage of humanity and tools.
absolutely. So here's this is a great question. If hesitation to AI music means people will be less likely to intentionally seek an AI segregated platform or section of a DSP, if such a thing existed, does that equate to less revenue for the platform? And if so, how does moral compass come up against Deezer's own economics?
Okay, so that means let me see if I understand the question. The question is, if AI music gets literally separated out on the platform into, let's call it another tab or genre,
Hmm.
does it affect the remuneration of the platform? That's the question, right?
Correct.
I think, to be honest, it's a moving target right now because none of the AI generated music, as far as I know, it's all work in progress, is actually remunerating the copyrighted material it is using to generate the AI music in the first place. So it's almost like we have to go 2 or 3 steps back in the value chain, fix that, and then I can answer the question.
Right, right, exactly. And I think that's why the deals that the majors have made with Suno and Udio are so interesting right now, and we're going to see where that
Yes.
goes. Because if people are going to get compensated for all of that training that was done, that sort of sets up, and also moving forward in the future, that sets up another piece of this puzzle that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah, and there is, the material today is not, as I said, 70% of the AI music on our platform is fraudulent. So clearly that's not being compensated, it's being removed. The 30% left over right now is all work in progress to make sure that the copyrighted material that is being used will be properly remunerated.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, coming back to this question that was in the beginning, which is, is Deezer going to be the outlier or is Deezer going to be, is your behavior going to be replicated on the other DSPs? And I actually think that it's very likely that, because what you're doing is going to be seen as positive. Even in your own study, people think that this is not the same. 100% AI generated content is not the same as human generated music. So I do think it's probably going to set an industry standard.
I know from a customer point of view that the value system that we are promoting, if to call it that. I can see how people engage with our social media posts when we talk about what we're doing. I can see how the press has taken interest in what we're doing. I think it's a little sad that we're the only ones doing it, to be honest with you. But it is very much a part of our purpose as a company to ensure that we are very clear about the fact that we actually care about the artists who are creating music and the fans who are trying to live it. So we're just reflecting back what we believe is part of our values, and we're happy to see a study like this actually, confirms that the average customer, without being a music industry expert, feels the same way.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've reached the end of our time. Maria, thank you so much. The study was so interesting, and I know that everyone really appreciates learning more about it. Like I said, we have our contact information in the chats if you want to get a hold of either one of us. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you, Maria, and everybody. Take care. Have a good holiday.
Thank you, Portia. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the team. Nicole, Amber, thank you so much.